Hey, Sterile Processing Universe, it's Hank Balch here with another episode of Fighting Dirty, and today we're going to talk about reasons to listen to Sterile Processing Podcasts. And I don't know if you know this or not, but there's a particular podcast that's really near and dear to my heart. It's called the Beyond Clean podcast, and it releases every single week in the industry through iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, you name it. Beyond Clean is there, and we talk to someone different around the globe in sterile processing each week, and they're approved for continuing education credits. But before I go further, let me start giving you some reasons, not just to listen to our podcast, but to listen to any sterile processing related podcast out there, because there's more than just Beyond Clean these days. Number one, you get to learn something new. Depending on the podcast, our episodes are about 25-30 minutes long. You can almost get the whole thing in on your drive into work or drive home or your day at the gym. Whatever it is, you can learn as you're doing something else. Unlike reading a book, unlike sitting at a conference, you can't really do two things at once as you're reading a book if you want to actually consume the information. With podcasts, you can. You can put it in the AirPod, put it on your MP3 player in your car, and learn and improve your own professional insight into this industry while you do anything else you want to do. Drive, run, work, play, whatever it is, a podcast can hook you up with great information about your industry. Number two, you can get CE credit through a lot of podcasts. Our Beyond Clean podcast started off in the early seasons and actually just went back to this in season 11. Each podcast episode is worth one CE. One whole CE. Now, if you're certified through ISHM, for instance, and you have the CRCST, you just need 12 CEs every year to recertify. So through Beyond Clean, in one season of 8 episodes, you can have 8 of your CEs. We got a ton of CEs that come out through the podcast. Right now, we've hit about 270 episodes total, and we've got a lot of webinars, conferences, and everything else that you can get your CEs through. But podcasting these days in sterile processing, you can get CEs to recertify. A fantastically great reason to listen to these podcasts. Number three, you can meet new people in the industry by listening to our show. As I mentioned before, we pride ourselves in talking to diverse voices all around the industry, doing all kinds of different things. We talk to technicians, we talk to supervisors and managers, we talk to vendors, we talk to entrepreneurs and innovators all around the globe, doing some pretty cool and awesome stuff in the industry of sterile processing. So you get to meet those folks. You get to listen to them for 25-30 minutes, tell their story, tell how they ended up where they are, and maybe even give you a little bit of encouragement to where your career could take you. Once you hear that name, you can look them up on social media, get their email address, and reach out and actually build a real friendship just by listening to the show and being introduced to these folks out there that are doing awesome things in our industry. In addition to that, and this is really for supervisors, lead techs, and educators in sterile processing departments, but you can use these podcasts to supplement your staff meetings. You can actually play them. As I said, they're about 25-30 minutes long. If you have weekly staff meetings or monthly staff meetings, this is a great opportunity to play an episode of the podcast, talk with the whole department about what that topic was. Did it spark any ideas? Can we improve our process in our own department? It's a cool, fun, creative way to spice up those staff meetings and supplement your educational vision in your department. It's free, easy to download. It's a great fix and opportunity again to diversify that education in your department right where you are. In addition to that, you can build in podcasts to your orientation and to your curriculum in your department. So let's say that you've got a 13-week program where you orient new folks who come in off the street or new students who start working in your facility. In addition to showing them everything that has to do with your department, why don't you assign a couple of podcasts to them about the topics that you find most important for what it is your department does and supports. It's a great opportunity to sit those folks off to the side for half an hour, let them listen to the podcast, take the quiz to make sure they understood the topics, and then put them back with their preceptor. And now they have a lot of information to be asking questions of their trainer and preceptor to better understand the workflow and the department and why they're doing what they're doing and why they're being told a particular way to do things. Now they have that podcast rattling around in the background that they can ask questions about and learn to do the job better. Now finally, the last point today that I'll bring up for listening to podcasts is I think it can prepare you for that next big opportunity. We talk about leadership often on the podcast, but we also talk about, and two, a lot of manufacturers in the industry that you may never have heard of, but you think, oh man, that's awesome. I would love to do that job. I would love to look at instrument tracking data 24/7 and get paid to do that. I would love to get to go to different hospitals all the time and be a clinical educator for a manufacturer of rigid containers. I would love to do those things. Well, listening to the podcast introduces you to all the different areas of the industry that you could build a career with your sterile processing expertise. And not just outside of the department, but you can find out about new departments that just have a great culture or maybe a brand new construction that you're like, you know what? That department's not too far from me. I want to apply to an open position now because it just sounds like an amazing place to work. All these things and more are right there for the taking in downloading and listening to a sterile processing podcast. Again, I've got something that's close to my heart called Beyond Clean Podcast, but we're not the only one out there. There's a lot of great content coming out now all across the industry about SPD. So I encourage you, take a couple of minutes each week, tune in to the shows that make sense for you, get that CE credit, and prepare for something big. All right, guys, thank you so much again for tuning in. Until next time, keep fighting dirty.